I called my cousin. He's a special operator, Zach, and I called him up and was like, "Whoa, they're shooting down helicopters here. They killed a flight surgeon a couple weeks before I got there. His name was Colonel Allgood." And it just got a little bit of a panic and just called him. I was like, "Hey, I'm I'm in a real bad spot here. I think I'm probably gonna die." And he's like, "Hey, listen, you know, wrong place, wrong time. You can either like saddle up and have the best adrenaline rush of your life, and like when you die, get shot down, you're flying in a medevac helicopter to go save men and women on the battlefield. There's no better way to go, you know." Um, so you can, you can cry and whine about it, or you can just saddle up and have an awesome adrenaline rush till the end. So I was like, hell yeah. So once you change your entire mindset and you don't care about dying anymore, you just kind of resign yourself to the fact that you're probably not going to make it out of here. Then you do what needs to get done. And it was it was a hell of a rush.
This is Shed Talk. I remember a time when somebody would call my integrity out. They would say I'm full of crap. But today's episode I was talking to with Josh McConkey was about integrity, about where you're at and what does it take to be who you are, and the things that he had gone through, his messaging, his content, and what he had to do to change his life. And he didn't even change it. He made it happen. Running for Congress, being in war. We learned a lot today. This is an episode that you need to listen to at Shed Talk. Good to see you. Enjoy the episode and listen to the end. All right, Josh, thank you very much for coming on Shed Talk. I got to ask you, now, is it Dr. Josh McConkey?
Yeah. Dr. Josh is good.
Dr. Josh, thank you very much for coming on Shed Talk here. This is actually an honor to have you here because I started to read your stuff, okay? You ran for Congress, which was kind of cool. And then you gave me a little bit of insight before we started here. But you made also a cool conversation here about the MacGyver. And how many people truly, and I talk about the younger generation, really know what to MacGyver yourself? I wanted you to tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, it was a television show in the 80s and 90s, and just God, I'm trying to remember the name of the lead. Remember the name of the lead actor that played him?
I think there was a couple of them, and I can't remember. They had the guy, the big black guy with the gold chains. No, that
was
was
18.
18.
That was 18.
18. Oh my
So,
gosh! See, I don't even know.
oh gosh, it's slipping tip of my tongue right now. But anyway, so he could get himself out of anything at any time, and just with my background as a as a military commander, combat veteran, and emergency physician, as well as a award-winning best-selling author, and then a run for Congress, I can pretty much plug myself into about any situation and have fun with it. So it's wide open.
So when you're talking about MacGyvering, I really want to get to it because all I can think about is you taking a basically a knife, turning it into something else, and doing that. What was one of your greatest conquering events as a MacGyver? And you could be, even on the table of being a surgeon that you had to put together.
I was in a situation in 1999. Are you a sports fan at all?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Okay, so I'm a big baseball guy. I follow a lot of hockey as well. So in 1999, I went to the second to the last game of the Kingdom with the Seattle Mariners. And my mom drops me off really early. I always made kind of a habit of going really early to games and going to batting practice. And I would kind of wander around the stadium. I kind of knew some of the ins and outs. So this is the old Kingdom in Seattle. And I ended up running into an older gentleman and his grandson. And as they're talking, they just literally walked into the Mariners clubhouse. And I kind of just followed along, and one of the bouncers at the door there, this is before 9/11, so there isn't like crazy security, right? So they asked me, "Hey, are you here with this guy here?" And I'm like, yes, I am. So I literally spent an afternoon taking batting practice with the Seattle Mariners. I pitched to the hitting coach. I've got a picture up on my wall here with Ken Griffey Jr. and me at the batting cage. Just crazy things like that. You just find yourselves in situations where you can kind of take advantage of opportunities, and I've been very adept at doing that.
And what's interesting, because you're talking about the opportunities, because you made the opportunity happen by doing that. And that falls into what you basically talk about in your book, and then your mindset. Can you tell me a little bit more about mindset?
That mindset in being available and taking advantage of those opportunities the Canadian astronaut, Chris Hadfield.
Yes.
He was the first Canadian to command the International Space Station. So he had a great book that I talked about in mine, but an astronaut's guide to life on Earth, and just really having a mindset of kind of everything that you do, you're doing it with a purpose. And he had used some examples, like when he was a kid, there's just things you didn't want to do, but he just asked him, he wanted to be an astronaut after watching like man land on the moon in 1969. And so everything he did, like from the time he was a kid, just asked himself one question, the purpose: will this help me become an astronaut? And if the answer is yes, then go through with it. And if the answer is no, for me, I just like to take advantage of opportunities, always have an open mind. Um, you know, just yeah, just take advantage of opportunities.
So a lot of people are listening and people talk about it's easy to do this, it's easy to this. And you just mentioned right now, it's having an open mind. The definition of an open mind is saying like creating curiosity and be open to do things. From your experience, having an open mind, because you've done absolutely, if you name it, you've done it. You've written a book, your Congress, like you've gone through this ups and downs. You learned a lot from it, but that whole aspect of it, can you explain a little more about that?
For me, the common purpose that I have, after serving in Iraq in 2007, I had a change in mindset where I saw a lot of death and destruction. I It took me a while to recover. I mean, I literally had come home and just kind of struggled and moved to New Zealand for a couple of years and was able to kind of get my head straight down there, played soccer, worked in an emergency department. And really, since about 2007, like my common purpose of what I do every single day, I wake up and just ask myself, what can I do today to try to make the world a better place? It's not about money anymore. I learned very quickly, like in a combat zone, you watch the death and destruction. They shot down 8 helicopters just before I got there. The day I landed in theater, they shot down one of our helicopters, and I was flying. I did medevac. I did one air assault, craziest thing I've ever done. And nobody cares how big your house is. Nobody cares how much money you make. Nobody cares like what kind of car you drive. Like none of that matters. And so for me, I mean, although I've got a wife and family, and I make sure I provide like money wise, that's not what motivates me. You have to be making a difference. And that's kind of the whole purpose of the book. Be the weight behind the spear. We can't all be superheroes jumping out of helicopters, taking down bin Laden, right? But each of those superheroes, I mean, these guys are crazy superheroes, just the mental capacity and the physical things that they do. It's They all had somebody in their life that empowered them and gave them the confidence to do those things. And that's what I try to be a part of. Teachers, coaches, volunteers, families. That's the best resource that any country has. And so I just want to make sure I'm trying to do something positive and being the weight behind the spear for somebody or something that matters.
So when you're getting ready to write the book, what was that aha moment just to basically said that you needed to write it?
So as an emergency physician, I've practiced medicine for over 20 years, and I'm an adrenaline junkie. But it's not all fun and games. You see a lot of mental health. You see, anxiety, depression, and suicide. And I'm just seeing an alarming trend in just the younger population increase in anxiety, depression, and suicide. And you sit down with a family and you are literally telling them their worst nightmare, like their child, their son, their daughter, or a family member has just died. And you sit down and you cry with that family. And then you just do the same thing over and over and over. And at some point, you just feel like you're smashing your head against a wall. Like I can save some lives. I saved a lot of them, but I can't save all of them. And I just realized I have to do something else to try to prevent these from happening. I mean, I can just keep going to work and smash my head against the wall and just do these same things over and over. But in writing the book, as a military commander, as an emergency physician, that's just the things that I see. And as an emergency physician, that whole 18 to 25-year-old population, they lack resiliency skills. And it's a combination of just the environment that they've grown up in is the iPhone generation. And then you throw COVID in there for Generation Z, and you shut them out of schools, you shut them out of churches. They already had difficulties communicating anyways, and you just isolate them during some critical years of their life. And these are the repercussions that we're seeing. And, if people don't know there's a problem, they can't fix it. So I've diagnosed the problem, and that is my prescription.
That's amazing. And when you have your book out there and you've got it going, then all of a sudden you're making some changes and then you're going to run for Congress. What was the purpose? Okay. Why you're going to give me a story of here's my purpose because I want to change. I want to change humanity. No, I get
Mhm.
that. But the purpose, you're running for Congress and for the right reasons. And we don't have to talk about the platforms or which parties you're
Yeah,
on.
you do all the politics. I mean, gosh, there's always two sides to everything. Just for me, I can't just sit and not do something. That's not the way I'm wired. That's not the way I was raised. If I see a problem, it's that special operations mentality where everything is your problem. Ultimate ownership. I had a great leadership lecture from Coach K, the basketball coach at Duke University, when I was a professor there. And just the key things that he really hammered away. It was the most amazing 2 hours of my life. I thought it was a recruiting stunt. And he came in for like our residency program, and just ownership, accountability, um, in your organization, that ultimate, just taking ownership of problems. Everything's your problem. And if nothing is your problem, or if it isn't your problem, you're not going to do anything about it. So you have to take ownership of that. And that's just kind of one of the special operations mindsets where nobody shirks responsibility. Everything is your problem, and everyone works as a team to get those problems solved. So like I just wake up every day and I have to do something to make a difference. I can't, if it's not making a difference, I'm wasting my time. I'm not that I'm an old guy, I'm 47 years old, but if I'm not making a difference, it's just not worth my time.
And you think about back into the ownership when people don't take ownership of where they're at. And you're 47 years old and obviously in great health. And how do people actually take control of their lives and have ownership and understand what does it truly mean to be responsible for who you are?
It, the You can't blame other people. So there's always like this victimhood, or this person did that. Yeah, I had a really crazy case a few years ago, from about 2018, 2020. I owned a freestanding emergency department, and unfortunately, I didn't do my due diligence on the CEO, and it ended up costing me. It's a crazy story, actually. So he he was embezzling money. There were some Medicare and Medicaid law violations that I was very concerned about. I had actually reported to the FBI and Texas Department of Insurance because this happened in Texas. The guy went berserk. He first offered me a $3.4 million bribe. So that obviously shows you he was very concerned. And I turned it down. I'm a colonel in the U.S. Air Force. You can't buy me off. And I think I was probably the first person he encountered that wouldn't take money and sign a non-disclosure agreement. So he went berserk, threatened my family. We actually had to move to Australia. And you could talk, oh, poor me. Like no, I made a bad decision. I own that decision. I learned a tremendous amount from that, and you move on. I'm not gonna sit there and cry a river and ooh, I lost $5 million. He's such a bad person. I can't control what other people do. I could have taken the $3.4 million bribe and moved on, but that's just not the way I'm wired. So I 100% own that decision. Sucks for me. I moved on with life, and karma does catch up eventually. I mean, eventually he'll probably be in jail. The FBI was frozen with COVID at the time because COVID hit right after that. There was crazy lawsuits. It got really bizarre. But he'll get what's coming to him. And then a few years after that, I won the North Carolina Educational Lottery. So, like, for real, karma works out, and I have a very strong faith as well that gets me through a lot. But just taking ownership of those issues, I made a bad call. I'm not going to blame anybody else for that. I should have done my due diligence. So,
And that's interesting. You slough it off like it's tongue in cheek. Oh,
well, it's been a couple of years. It was extremely painful. Extremely painful. It's been a couple of years. I can talk about it now, but oh yeah, that was tough. That was very tough.
And when you think about that, I'm gonna dive into that a bit because it's interesting because you just basically talk what it truly means, and in the Army, what integrity and what you stand for as a human being, as an individual, and how hard that really was, and what you had to go through. And like you said, karma's Karma will get you, and then all of a sudden to win the lottery.
Yeah,
Like, let's get into. I want to deep dive that a little bit about that emotional feeling that you got during that time. You could have had $3 million. Here's a guy that's obviously your business is just blown up. You could go to jail. I'm assuming, and
oh
or
yeah,
hang
I
on
had applied
side.
for a national security position on the National Security Council as an emergency physician. I'm dual boarded in EMS disaster medicine, so they had a reserve position on that council, and the security clearance questions were clearly a problem because of the business. So it had a negative effect on a lot of things.
And then how did that make you feel?
Oh, a lot of anger, sleepless nights, just difficulty sleeping for weeks and months, the legal drama going through. If anybody's been through like a business lawsuit, oh, just crazy nasty. The guy was literally crazy. Just he was going to burn the business to the ground just to punish us, because he had majority share ownership and just froze the bank accounts, wouldn't make payments, actually stopped paying bills. So it he exacted as much pain as possible, trying to use that as leverage to kind of get me to kind of give up and go away. And I just refused to give in. I turned down the bribe, and he just went absolutely berserk. I know now that he's had multiple lawsuits at other businesses, and they'd all signed non-disclosure agreements. And he found the one dude that would turn down $3.4 million. But he made it extremely painful. He's a nasty dude.
Man, and your mindset had to be so clear, and you were so determined to say, "No, I've got to move forward," and to
Well,
do
and then
that.
once he threatened the family, things ramped up rather quickly. I take that extremely personal as a military member with some training, and had a long talk with my wife. And one of two things are going to happen here, and so we made sure we removed ourselves from the situation, and we literally had to bail to Australia to get away from him. But yeah, it's been a few years now. You can talk about it, but it's the craziest story. I've never seen a dude try to burn down his own business, just burn it to the ground and bankrupt it just to punish a partner. But the guy was crazy.
And it's interesting because in business, when you talk about some people, they just flip the switch they're on the totally opposite side, and you just go, where are you thinking here? So being in partners with people like that, you really have to watch yourself.
Yeah,
And
and that's on me. Had I done and dug in there, I would have found those two lawsuits. Had I really pursued that, two other business partners. There were like classmates in residency. Really, you saw them change with the amounts of money that were coming in, and I mean, just the money didn't change who I was as a person, and it just changed them. And saw them make decisions, just purely financial decisions that I just was not going to be a part of that. So that's that's how it ended, very painfully.
well, I appreciate you deep diving into that story a little bit, because then from there, you're at a stage in your life that you're at your lowest point. Then all of a
Oh,
sudden you're
that,
fast
that
forwarding.
that's pretty low. Yeah.
Would you consider that one of your lowest points?
Oh, yeah. That's got to be the lowest point. I mean, I've been through a lot of crazy stuff, but I mean, probably the lowest point was initially getting to Iraq and realizing that I was probably going to die there. So you just have to change your mindset. In that, I called my cousin. He's a special operator, Zach, and I called him up and was like, "Whoa, they're shooting down helicopters here. They killed a flight surgeon a couple weeks before I got there. His name was Colonel Allgood." And it just got a little bit of a panic, and just called him. I was like, "Hey, I'm I'm in a real bad spot here. I think I'm probably going to die." And he's like, "Hey, listen, wrong place, wrong time. You can either like saddle up and have the best adrenaline rush of your life, and like when you die, get shot down, you're flying in a medevac helicopter to go save men and women on the battlefield. There's no better way to go, you know. Um, so you can you can cry and whine about it, or you can just saddle up and have an awesome adrenaline rush till the end." So I was like, hell yeah. So once you change your entire mindset and you don't care about dying anymore, you just kind of resign yourself to the fact that you're probably not going to make it out of here. Then you do what needs to get done, and it was a hell of a rush.
Wow.
But that initial couple of weeks was probably the lowest. So I mean, nobody wants to die, but once you just get over that, it's fine. Coming home was hard.
Why is it coming home hard?
So when you're in that environment, things are this survival instinct just takes over. So, do you want to live or do you want to die? Very easy question. You take care of the people around you. You've got a job to do. Everyone else has a job to do. You take that ownership of what needs to get done. And then as a reservist, literally a couple weeks later, boom, poof, I'm back in the US. I was working in a community emergency department, like nothing had ever happened. And I had a couple of moments where I'm running a pediatric code, and it's a young baby, a couple of weeks old, and doesn't go well, and the baby dies. It's like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. I walk out of the emergency, out of that trauma bay, that resuscitation bay, and immediately get accosted by some crazy lady and her 14-year-old kid. And he was literally there for an ingrown toenail. Like it was an ingrown toenail, and it's very painful. Okay. I walked out of the room and I said, "Hey, we're going to need a minute," because we're all crying, like me and the nursing staff. And I said, "Hey, we just had a baby die." And she's like, "Well, I was here first. I don't care. I want to be seen." I was like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, whoa!" I lost it. I actually released some 4-letter words and threw her out of the emergency department. And she's like, "You can't do that." I'm like, "Security, throw her out of this emergency department right now." And you can't do that. So it was just kind of regular civilian life is much different than being in a combat zone. And I think those stressors, and the majority of kind of the population hasn't experienced those things. And when you talk about PTSD and the mental stress, from combat veterans, those are just the things that are hard to deal with. And it was hard enough for me that my wife just obviously recognized those. Elsa, she's amazing, and just said, "Hey, let's just move somewhere." We just disappeared to New Zealand for a year, and I decompressed, played soccer, goalkeeper at Rotary United. It was fantastic, and then worked in a little emergency department and got my head straight. So I needed that. I needed some time to decompress. It was hard.
And it's interesting because you just gave me an aha moment, and you're looking at this, and I talk about health, wealth, and mindset, and asking ourselves a better question. And here you are, you just came back from devastation there, that you're going to live or die. Now you're back in civilization. Basically, you can do anything you want now. Meaning, yes, you had to decompress and do it, but now life is pretty simple. And I use it as a tongue-in-cheek thing, as in business, as in all of a sudden,
Mhm.
does it really matter what happens in business? Because what you just went through is far greater than what business is. That means you can accomplish anything that you ever wanted to do. And there's no saying no in any aspect that you want to do. But getting through that first decompression had to have been gut wrenching to pull yourself together to move forward.
And you'll see higher rates of kind of depression and suicide and PTSD in people that make that transition multiple times. So every time you do that, it gets harder going into combat. I mean, my very first time was kind of difficult, but then you kind of get into that mindset very quickly because you have a survival, instinct. Like, yes, I want to live. And coming just the back and forth, like people during, these, gosh, the US was at war for like, 20 years, and people 3, 4, 5 deployments. It just takes its emotional toll. That back and forth is really difficult.
And you mentioned a little bit about, and I hadn't heard this before, was the actual adrenaline rush. And I didn't even think about the adrenaline rush. Okay, here's life and death. And, experience that true adrenaline to go in there. That's a big play in that life and death situation? Is that adrenaline?
Yeah, you've got, all of the medevac men, women out there that have flown. You're sitting back at a compound. We were at the LSA Anaconda in Balad, and you're just sitting down, having a meal any time of day. You just, that radio goes off, first up and chase aircraft, medevac, medevac, medevac. You just sprint out to an aircraft. You throw on like just some bulletproof gear, that they call like these little chicken plates. And then you just kind of rack a bullet in the chamber and, chamber your 9 mil. You just fly straight into, who the hell knows? Just crazy environments, snipers, secondary IEDs, like usually the convoy's got a lot of hits. So there's always like some blown up vehicles with bodies all over the place. And like, geez, just crazy. But then you're running out there trying to take care of people, and, just hoping there's not a sniper there to pick you off or anything. But it's a crazy rush. Yeah.
Wow.
I don't think I will ever experience anything like that again.
What would you tell other combat guys that are getting ready to go to war? Any advice that you would say for future participants? I
You know,
guess I'm going to say.
the best thing about like our military, it's all volunteer. We're there because we want to be there. So they know why they're there. They know what they're doing, and they're extremely well trained. And whether you believe in the politics or some of those things that you'll see talked about with some of these conflicts, like you're there for the men and women that are with you. And there's nothing greater than making a sacrifice for those men and women. So, if your time's up, I mean, it's up. It could happen anytime, anywhere. It's your random mortar attacks. I had one colleague that was just walking to lunch, and they just caught him in an open field and dropped in a couple of mortars, took some shrapnel in the thigh and the pelvis. Just just wrong place, wrong time. He lived though, thank goodness. I think he's doing okay. But they know why they're there, what they're doing, and they're well trained. So have confidence and just execute your job. Don't get complacent. Just like in business, complacency kills. It kills businesses. It kills in combat environments. You have to keep wanting to get better and make changes, and don't have big egos. Um, the people that have the egos and get set in their ways, they're usually the first ones to die off. You don't be afraid to take criticism. Learn, get better. Don't ever get complacent.
And when you were here, when you came back, when did you write the book?
Yeah. So well, from Iraq, that was 2007. We came back from Australia. It was around June of 2021, and just I felt like the country had changed, and just I was gone for less than a year, and what I was seeing in the emergency departments were just the mental health issues. And then in the military, I took command at Andrews Air Force Base in 2022. Say, wow, like something is clearly changed, and it's a combination of generational issues and a combination of some decisions that were made during COVID, and these are the repercussions of those decisions. So rather than pointing fingers and blaming people, like, what are we going to do about it? Own the problem. So I sat down, spent like a year, probably closer to a year and a half, writing a book, trying to solve some of these issues, or at least those are my thoughts, and that's what I think we can do to help pick this generation up. So that's me just being proactive and doing something about it.
What was your biggest takeaway in the book that you would strongly recommend if
That what
anybody?
you do every single day matters. Like every person has gifts. Everybody's gifts are different. I coached Little League baseball, some soccer. Obviously, as a military commander, I have a lot of influence and can mentor young men and women. Some people just love animals or are really good with music. Use that to your advantage. Go to your animal shelter. Go volunteer and take care of some animals that can be emotional support animals for somebody. I mean, volunteer in your church, your school. There's so many different avenues. There's so many nonprofit organizations out there that you can be a part of. Find something that you care about and do it, because every single hero that's out there had someone really special in their life, like volunteers, mentors, teachers, coaches. Like, be part of that. Don't just sit there to yourself. Like, if you don't feel like you have an impact on people around you, that's not the right mindset. That's not taking ownership of the overall issues. So get out there and do something, because what you do matters.
When did you know that you were a great leader?
The probably the combat tour in Iraq really kind of honed a lot of leadership skills. I could have I could have chickened out and not flown. There was, I mean, not a requirement for the medical director to get out there and fly some of those missions, but I just have had some great leadership and mentors that I've learned from, like in history. Did you ever watch the TV show Band of Brothers?
Yes.
Okay, so Major Winters, I think retired Lieutenant Colonel Winters, Richard Dick Winters. You read about that, and obviously I'd seen the HBO series as well, but read a lot more about him. Just fantastic displays of leadership. Don't ask people to do things that you're not willing to do yourself. Get your hands dirty. Nothing is above you. I mean, I'll get in there and scrub some toilets from time to time at the squadron. Clean things up. Is that the best use of my time as a colonel? No, but I will demonstrate that, and just to show that I'll do whatever it takes for this team to be successful. And So the combat deployment is where I learned a lot of that, and then taking command was really kind of the ultimate, like, wow, like I can lead people. Like I genuinely care. I'm really good at this, and it's making a difference. So, the military is what really did it for me.
Interesting, and the military, and that it sure gives you perspective and on life at that point. So I want to ask another question. In your life, and then through everything that you've been through, and I always ask this question: is there's one thing, one little thing that you did, say 5 years ago, that if you look back today, that you were going, I'm so glad I did that because that changed my outlook today, that made me be great today. So what I do today will affect me 5 years from now. And it could be something a small example. I'll use an example. Say, I decided not to eat bread as an example. So 5 years later, man, I lost 30, 50 pounds, as using that as an example. That changed my life because now I don't have sleep apnea. I don't have this, whatever the storytelling. Was there one little thing in your life that you did that you go, wow, was I ever smart then? Because it's kind of like telling your past tells us where we are today, and we get to read the future tomorrow because the little things you did today.
Well, I can come up with two things. One, in just being prepared all the time. So when I was in Australia and New Zealand, the first time being down there in New Zealand, I actually got my board certification in Australasia. Just always having a backup plan, that I could always go and fall back on. So having the licenses in Australia and New Zealand gave me a bit of leverage in that business situation. I knew he was going to get mean and nasty. I didn't think it would get that crazy, but I had an exit strategy, and so I'm super anal. I have like plan A, B, C, D, E at any given time. And then as far as the one thing that I did, I'm really glad that I decided to take that business venture, even though it was essentially a monumental failure, and I learned a tremendous amount about myself. So I remember having very long discussions with my wife for several months on, were we going to move from North Carolina to Texas and take this business opportunity? So that time in Texas, I learned a lot about myself. Having the guts to turn down a $3.4 million bribe and stand up to a guy like that. Um, that was my first exposure to politics in Texas as well. And then, I learned just so much about business, um, and more about leadership. So being a business owner, you learn a tremendous amount about leadership as well. We had a great crew of, a couple of docs, nurses, ancillary staff. We had a really good team that performed very well in some very difficult circumstances during the lawsuit as they just tried to dismantle the company. And, that it was a good learning process. So if I can get through that, that in a combat tour, I feel pretty confident I'm going to be successful with just about anything. So, and that's what's giving me the confidence to like write the book and run for Congress and those things. So, all those, even good experiences, bad experiences, they all add up to who you are right now. So, although it was very painful, I'm glad I did it.
And it's interesting because it build that confidence to where you are in running for Congress. That can't be easy. Like all of a sudden, here
No,
you go, you're going to do
but
it.
if you want a secret, I did not like public speaking. So I did mock trial in high school, and the first couple of when you go through the mock trial and testify, I literally had crippling anxiety. It was like hyperventilating. Like really took a while to get over that. I didn't like speaking in public. I had to learn that as a military commander, and then running for politics, that run for Congress, I had to just jump right in and do it, and it just beat the fear right out of me. I mean, nonstop for an entire year. It was a very busy, grueling campaign, but I learned a lot how to talk with people and those communication skills. I generally didn't like doing that. It just beat the fear right out of me.
What was the scariest part of running?
Something on that scale, just not knowing, just something completely new and foreign. Although I've always been a politics nerd, I followed all the, presidential elections, maybe probably since, like the Kennedy administration, like in history. And then for me, the first 1996 was my first election that I got to vote in. That was Clinton and Dole, and I just always followed that, but having no idea how that system works. With the different political action committees and getting up there in DC and meeting with people. Um, it was kind of scary at times, but again, you learn a lot and have that confidence in yourself. Like, hey, listen, I can fly medevac runs and live through some mortar attacks and other crazy things. Like this is nothing. I mean, when people would ask you, especially in the emergency department too, like even with crazy situations now, they're like, man, how do you always stay so calm? I'm like, listen, like nobody's shooting at you. There's no exploding rounds. It's going to be just fine, and just staying cool and making decisions cool under pressure. And that's, I think all emergency physicians have to have that skill. You're not going to survive in that job if you panic. So, yeah.
So, is there any one thing that you would tell our listeners about your book, about anything out there at all? Because we're going to be wrapping up here pretty quick, and I really
Yeah.
wanted to sum in about you. One last thing.
Just the best resource in your community, wherever you are. I mean, there's people all over the world watching this. Your best resource is you. It's your people. Teachers, coaches, volunteers, families, that community will get you through anything. So just recognizing that and being part of that. Be a part of something that matters or get behind someone that matters. Those things are critically important.
Awesome. You know what, Josh? Thank you very much for being on Shed Talk. This was a wake-up call for myself because I got to learn that aha moment and the things that you don't know. Thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now you know. Shed Talk.